Hello, everyone. This is Patty Burgess of The Death Chicks. We always say if it's Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock on the East Coast, it's got to be The Death Chicks. So excited to be here today with our guests. We've been talking pre-show and laughing. You wouldn't think that laughter and death and grief and loss all go together, but we're going to hear about how they do and why they do and how that opens up the possibilities as we were talking about earlier with our guests. So we're thrilled that you're here. We're going to jump right into it. I want to introduce Misty, my co-host from bittersweetblessing.com, and again, I'm Patty Burgess with doingdeathdifferently.com and teachingtransitions.com. So we're glad you're here, and this is the beginning, actually the beginning of our Afterlife series, and that leads up to the Afterlife conference at afterlifeconference.com. We're going to be listening to Austyn share what she's going to be doing at the conference towards the end of the interview. So welcome, welcome. This is going to be a great show, a topic I am passionate about and can't wait to get to. So Misty, over to you.
Great stuff. Thanks, Patty. So we have Austyn Wells with us. I'm so delighted to have Austyn here. Austyn has a number of gifts and skills, and I love how she's blended them together. Austyn's a grief counselor, she's a spiritual medium, and she's a practicing shaman. Austyn sees, hears, and feels and communicates with spirit. She can speak with people who have passed on, as well as the energetic guides who assist us on this journey. Austyn shares that we have many guides, that we're never alone, and that we always have help. And Austyn helps people tune into the unconditional love that surrounds us every moment of our lives. So Austyn, I'm going to jump right in and ask you a little bit to explain about the work you do, about what it is to be a medium. Since this is the first show in our Afterlife series, some of our guests may really not have an idea about that. So let's start with that, and then how that connects with our topic of death.
Terrific. First of all, Patty and Misty, thank you very much for having me as your guest. I'm very honored, especially to be the first guest representing the Afterlife Conference. It's the third time I've done the conference, and it's really amazing and absolutely in the pocket of what the two of you are passionate about. A medium, and let's just jump in there. A medium is different from a psychic, so I think a lot of people might be familiar with a psychic. A psychic is someone that you would go to who would intuitively be able to give you information that may not be within your own grasp. It could cover relationships, it could cover circumstances within your life, but a psychic, for the most part, will pick up information that directly relates to this living life and just being in human form and what's happening for you. A medium, the term is a good one, the medium is between two souls, one of which is in physical form and one of which is not. So one has transitioned in some way. And I also want to just add to that, there are mediums that will equally pick up on people's guides, but the mainstay of a medium is to create evidential or to offer evidential information that verifies the fact that the soul continues after the change called death. So mediums will also talk with pets too, which are amazing to chat with, by the way.
I bet. Probably a lot less complicated, right?
They are, well, they run by instinct, and they seem, at least from my opinion, and every medium will have a completely different opinion, they seem to be dedicated to our soul for the time period that we are in physical form. So they walk with us for the entirety of our lives, which is why a medium will be able to pick up on a pet or a pet that's connected to a soul. And it's really sweet. Their intentions are loving, and they know what side of the bed you sleep on. They know when you've been sad about things. They know your unfinished business, and they're great to talk to because they don't have an agenda, except for to love you.
Lovely. Yeah. Oh, how wonderful. You know, Austyn, it's so exciting to have you here as a medium. And I will say this, it's interesting that, many people you talk to have this wide range of feelings, beliefs, thoughts about a medium, what a medium does. And, some people may have a lot of trouble understanding that this is really a thing, that this is something that is real and connected, and perhaps until they've experienced it. So if you could take us back a little bit from when you started and how this came about. I don't sense that it just, you woke up one day and boom, you had this, or maybe you did, or you knew it but you weren't quite sure. Tell us how it came to you so that we can see that evolution.
I am fortunate to have always had a sense of the spirit world. The most clear memory I have was when I was 5. I was in a fashion show that my mom wanted me to be in, God love her. And I was really nervous, and I had to be a bridesmaid, and I had to toss flowers into the audience. And I mean, at 5 years old, you really could, like, do nothing and people would still be fine with you. But I was nervous. It was the middle of the night. My mom wasn't one to wake up in the middle of the night with a problem, so I kind of needed to figure it out for myself. And so I prayed from the bottom of my soul for help and comfort to know that I would be okay. In that moment, and it was really probably less than a moment between the prayer release and the answer, the walls of my room started to morph. And from the walls came all of these people. And I was not familiar with any of them. They weren't visually familiar. But the irony was I was not afraid. And they filled my room. They surrounded my bed. And this one woman in particular came up to my bedside. She was very maternal, very loving. And she spoke to me from her heart. So it wasn't words from her lips. It was an intuitive language. And she said, "How can we help you?" And I just said within myself, I'm really scared I'm going to mess this thing up. So my room became 2 realities. If I looked to the right, I could see the runway of the next day, and I could see me walking down the runway, and I could see I was okay, and that I was doing well. And then she brought my awareness to the audience, and I could feel how much the audience wanted me to be successful. And then she brought my awareness even further in perspective to the whole room, and the awareness of how the room was held by spirit, and how there were all these guides and angels and this loving presence that, if I expanded my awareness, was absolutely there. So there was no way I could fail. And the minute I realized that, I was back in my bed, and some of the people had left, but the woman was still with me. And she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yep, I'm good."
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
What an amazing, and that really transcended your age at the time, because those kinds of understandings seem to be soul level, not connected to what a 5-year-old would really kind of comprehend, but yet you did connect from that viewpoint, from that standpoint.
Yeah. And from that orientation, I was just aware of spirit. There was a dog down the street, and I always would intuitively say hello to it. And then one day as I was going to school, it said, "Well, it was nice knowing you." And I said, "Are you leaving?" And it said, "Kind of." And when I came home, it had been killed by a car. So that moment was the point when my little soul at that point said, "I think this is too much information for me, so can we dial it down a little bit?" And then it was latent until my 20s when I kind of re-encountered it again. And then it just has been in the background ever since. But it was a lovely thing to be aware of as a child, because it continually, it reminded me how much support we have. And it also helped me know at a very young age that prayer is the most brilliant tool.
We just froze up.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't know if she can hear us, but I wanted to say that last night when I was speaking with Austyn, she mentioned how... Oh, are you back, Austyn? Can you hear me? Okay, great. You froze up for a bit.
You guys froze too. It was a frozen moment.
Frozen in time for all of posterity.
It was like a Disney film.
Well, I did wonder if, I do wonder if, like, there's any energetic things going on, and I love that and welcome that no matter what. So that's terrific.
I think there's a solar eclipse happening. I don't know how that affects things, but what I was going to say, Austyn, is last night when we spoke, you mentioned that most people who are dying, and just as this dog, they know before. They know it's time, and you also mentioned that most people have left their body, or at least partially left their body, before the actual time of death comes. Could you speak about that a little bit more?
Absolutely. One of the challenges I think we have with death is the fact that we are so visual. So everything we see is as an entirety. So we see each other as complete human beings, and when the body isn't moving, then the person is dead, and then that whole element is dissipated. If you can think of a soul like a pie that has a whole bunch of different slices to it, we can, at different points in our lives, be at different places at different times. For instance, Misty, your daughter Hannah is at school, I presume. So there's a part of you as a mother that is talking to me, yet a part of you is aware of your daughter at school, and the more you go into that, you can visualize the classroom she's in. So even though your consciousness is predominantly here, there's an aspect of your consciousness that is with your daughter, and probably always with your daughter on some level. When a person, and this is all education from the spirit world and from witnessing how they show me what death looks like for them. There will need to be an element of our consciousness that's connected to our physical body at that moment of departure from the physical body and a full transition into the soul. But that doesn't mean that the fullness of the soul is with the body when the point of death happens. And this happened for the first time. One of the stories that comes to mind is there was a woman who had come to me about her father, and her father he was on a bicycle and got hit by a truck. And as anyone who would have experienced that in the telling of the story, you would be just terrified for the father for the moment of impact in that whole thing. It was instantaneous as passing. But so the father walked us through moments before, and literally there was 2 corners that he went around, and the first corner he literally showed himself stepping out of his body, probably what seemed to be like 85 or 90%. And I even had feelings that there was other elements that had stepped out at some point, but that seemed to be what the grab was. And then as he went around the corner, and I could talk to him in both locations, so I could talk to him at the place he stepped out and goes, yeah, don't need to be there for that. And then when the moment of impact happened, there was a part of him that had to animate the physical body, but the full consciousness didn't need to be present. I think the hospice workers would be absolutely aware of this, because if they witness morphine and all of the amazing things that happen when morphine's in the body, there's already that in and out experience where they're talking with loved ones. So it's a continuation of the conversation. But that's a better, longer explanation of what I meant by that.
Well, I think that's very, very comforting, and especially for anyone who has lost somebody, I think to let them know that perhaps that full impact of pain or discomfort or understanding, I can't imagine what perhaps the soul may be thinking on the way over, but I believe that there's lots of help, just like there was for you in your room that day at 5 years old. Can you share with us a little bit about it seems like I picture it, not that I'm a runner or anything, but I do picture it like this relay, like passing the baton, and it never gets dropped. That, from the physical to the soul level to spirit world, there's this beautiful handoff. At least
there is. There's
okay.
and additionally going in with the ability for the soul to be in multiple places at the same time.
Okay.
I had an experience with a family that I read for. I was reading for a wife, and her son had passed away, and he had been killed in San Francisco. And I was always, I was at, this is just to show you how the work of a medium expands and grows. So as a medium, if spirit shows me something, we tend to look straight ahead and kind of take in what's being shown. But I started in my sessions when a spirit would have me standing with them in a remote location that connected to their soul. I started looking to the right and looking to the left, taking in the full, kind of like a GoPro camera, like taking in the whole fullness of the situation. So when this young man, whose name was Jordan, showed me his passing moment, he was outside of his body witnessing what was happening. But I started looking at whom else was with him. And there was a gentleman standing next to him who was very tall and I had met at this point his father, and looked so much like his father, but I thought, well, there's no way his father can be there because his father's living, his dad's not there. And so I said to my client, I described him, and I said, it looks like this. I said, it looks like your husband, but it must be your husband's father because it doesn't make sense. And she said, no, that's his father was very short. They're very different. And I said, well, that's really weird because it looks like Jordan's dad, but that doesn't make sense. So she went back and talked to Jordan's dad, and it turned out Jordan's dad had had a dream where he was standing next to his son when he died. And all of a sudden I thought, you know what? If we can be in multiple places at the same time, of course we would want, on a soul level, to be supporting our family members when the moment of death happens.
That's right.
Of course we would be there. And it was like one of those duh moments, but it was so illuminating. So now when I'm presented with that opportunity to witness that moment, I really want to take in who consciously or unconsciously was there.
Right, right.
Because it will reveal itself at some point.
Wow, that's really interesting, Austyn. And it makes me think about the whole space-time continuum. And we touched on this last night, too, when we talked about the idea of time, and you mentioned time is two-dimensional. We have past, we have present, we have future, and we live in a three-dimensional world. Yeah. Can you expand on that, please?
Yes. That was the realization I had, was I kept drawing time for people because I was trying to teach mediums and intuitives how to capture time passing when they were representing a soul. And I started realizing we absolutely see it as a line. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that's it. Time isn't creative. Time isn't negotiable. It's just this fate, essentially. So my shamanic studies really went into the elasticity of time. And also, if you think about time with regards to when you're doing something you love, you have no sense of time. When you do a past life regression, you have no sense of time. And so there are moments when time is absolutely not linear. Only when we're perceiving it and adding it to our days and getting stressed about time is when we put this bracket of pressure on it. So the soul knows all time is now and all moments are now. And I've also seen by people doing healing work, when they have an epiphany, that they change not only the potential futures of those that are following in their soul footsteps, but they equally can shift the past because they're holding the way they hold a story. So it happens in a mediumship session. If something comes up and there's an epiphany with my sitter and they suddenly realize, oh my gosh, I should do that differently, I see all of the ancestors that are associated with that issue karmically kind of manacled, and the manacles all pop open, and I know those souls now can release the need to understand that lesson, and then the whole soul group can now move on to the next homework piece.
So, wow, what you're saying has such import and impact here as and we don't even recognize the connections yet. Oh my gosh. So what you're saying is when we're holding or we're constricted or we're with an issue that's not opening for us, we're really kind of cutting off possibility if we're not in a position to open to what may be. Is that what you're saying?
Think of a moment within your life, Patty, where you're still kind of working on it. Then take all the people. Yeah.
Just one.
You're so evolved. I just assumed you were miles,
Thanks,
just have that one little hangnail left to work on. But if you take a moment in your lifetime where it's still congested, we'll just say that. Okay. Now, connect all of the people, like imagine it in a moment in time and place and space. And then have all the people that are connected to that moment, and imagine all of them have tethers to that moment.
Wow. Wow.
So when we get stuck is not a soul principle. Stuck is a mind principle. Mm-hmm. So the stuckness it's not just about us. We're disallowing we're disallowing a proper evolution of everybody concerned with something if we're keeping a moment in time, more or less in that two-dimensional perception of time. But if we could allow ourselves to know that there are gifts in that moment and that it happened for us, then you have a different frame by which to engage the moment and say, hey, that's awesome, I got my feelings hurt. Yay! What did I learn from it? So if that moment happens again, then you get a different way of dealing with it. But it really puts the power in the court of personal responsibility. So if you can release something, you untether the people. Now, whether or not they stay tethered to that moment,
is their soul's choice. Yes, exactly.
But at least you're giving them the potential of revisioning the moment because you're seeing it differently.
So, and that's a great way to put it. So, as simple as the quote "how-to" for this, for people listening, saying, "Gosh, I'm really working on something and I'm not able to see it a different way." The how-to is to go inside and look at the possibilities, would you say, and decide that the universe is not against you, it is for you, and where can you pick out those places where this could actually be a gift? Is that what you would say?
I think I'd also, it's beautifully said, Patty. I would also just add to that, I chose this.
Boy, that's a tough one, isn't it? When you talk about the role of personal responsibility, because what seems to be happening out there, many of us look at out there, and it's a us and them, whether it's a person, place, or thing, and that it seems like it's happening to us. It's that ability to look at it differently.
But if we put ourselves in a place of things happening to us, we automatically put ourselves in a place of victim.
Exactly.
Because we disallow our free will. And the free will is the greatest gift, one of the greatest gifts the soul has. So if we can look at things from a perspective of it's happening for me. So what am I learning from this? What's the sage part of this? Because otherwise, if we walk around with things that happen to us, we're completely disempowered, and then we will feel like we can't do anything about it. So just holding it differently, energetically, will change your relationship with it. And I think it's so helpful to have that in your, Google has its toolboxes. That's our human being toolbox, is knowing that everything is a gift. And then you go into the world knowing that you're supported and having a sense of optimism about things instead of feeling that it's another thing that's happening.
Well, and I could believe that could be especially powerful and important for people who are grieving, because in those cases, many times people can't separate this is happening to me, and I would expect it would be very hard for people to say, how could this be happening for me? But I think that's the question. How could this be happening for me? And I know in your work, you work as a grief counselor as well, and I would love for you to share a little bit about how you work with people in that regard, helping them see where the gifts might be. And I also wanted to add, it's interesting, I've seen some almost spontaneous kinds of healings when people have gone to mediums. And I think that is amazing to watch. It really is, because people have been so constricted and held so much in that finally they get validated. But I know when we were talking with Terry Daniel of the Afterlife conference, she was also concerned that people sometimes use mediums sort of like, like they're sitting there eating popcorn, the next medium, the next medium, the next medium. So if you could share with us a little bit about that, that would be great. I know that's a lot in one, but with grief work, with people who are grieving, and appropriate use of mediums.
I know Terry is very much a proponent of a balance with grief work and mediumship, and there's a very strong point there. I became a grief counselor because I realized I did not know what I was getting myself into. I mean, if you would have told me at one point in my life, oh, you're going to be dealing with death a lot, I'd be like, yeah, I think I'll choose something else, thank you. Yes. But I'm actually, I think, perfectly suited for this subject matter because I'm an optimist, and I also find all the beauty in the dying process and in the grief process, honestly. Because we have to learn how to receive as much as we have to learn as to release. And the letting go is the opportunity in grief, but within it, it's also the celebration. It's the value of a human soul and how much we make a difference. So the grief counseling helps me, and not all mediums are grief counselors. I think it would be really helpful if they were. But I'm not here to judge anybody else. It's just what's worked for me. I have a couple of clients who I have long-term relationships with, and if it was strictly for mediumship, it would not be helpful to their soul. But with the grief counseling, what I can do is I can blend the two. And also, when it gets to a point where the person's becoming connected on just the mediumship, I got to hear messages, I got to get this, I got to get this, then I can kind of shift to the grief counselor part and come from a perspective of intelligence from that standpoint to nurture through their journey. But it also is knowing when the client comes to you and they need much more help than a medium. Yeah. But yes, Austyn, Patty, there can be beautiful transitions or beautiful healings that can happen when it's a moment happening again, a recapturing of a lost moment, and that's what mediumship offers. It offers the potential for healing that once a person dies, they're unable to rejoin, reunion, have that moment. But it also, if the yearning for the human being is not properly fostered and dealt with, then their grief stays open, and that's when mediumship can be sometimes more harmful in the long run. Not harmful, but it's a Band-Aid on something that really needs to heal.
Right. Something like more complicated grief.
Yes, more complicated grief for sure. Yes, Misty.
Yeah, so just on the, there's so much I want to ask about, but on the topic of transitions, there's a few viewers who have questions about that, so I'm thinking I'd like to share that. Well, first of all, Julie Sager-Nierenberg, a dear friend and follower, says your insight about she has new insight. She's now new thought about her morphine-induced experiences, seeing the many faces of her partner Earl. So glad that you had that experience, Julie. And Scott Scowcroft is here, and he's wondering about. He's asking if you can elaborate on the transition as it relates to hospice caregivers' experiences with their patients under the influence of morphine.
Okay. Thank you, Scott, for asking such a bold question. Now, I am not a medical doctor, and there will be a very different biological assertion and dissertation on morphine from the chemical standpoint, the cellular standpoint, and all that. I am talking about the soul, and I'm talking about the connection to the physical body. I have witnessed, and this is predominantly with my experience with my father, it seems to be kind of a gateway drug. Gateway in the sense that I felt like I was witnessing my father stepping into other worlds. I was witnessing my father having spiritual experiences in front of me. And the irony was, when my mom was with him, nothing happened. Nothing happened. My father talked about angels with me. My father had salient conversations with his mother and father. He had all the dogs in our family up on the bed at one point. He educated me about, I felt like it was a window into the afterlife. So especially for hospice caregivers and people that have that beautiful moment of being with the soul when it transitions, there's such an interchange between dimensions. So that's really, Scott, what I was talking about with that is that there's just amazing opportunities to witness what is happening to the soul as it is gently, and I think the morphine and the hospice care in general allows the soul to transition in kind of a beautiful way.
Beautifully,
Thank you.
beautifully said.
And
I was
also from, I'll just share this a second question with Julie, and then we'll pop back over to you. Julie was wondering about your term, the soul gardener, and I love that term too, and I guess we're both hoping that you can expand on that a little bit.
Certainly. The reason why I call myself soul gardener is because this work blew my mind. And it made me understand how imperative it is for us to see ourselves as a soul. And it's so easy to get lost. And it's so easy to get caught up in the circumstances in life. So as much as I'm a medium, I'm a huge cheerleader for humanity. So the soul gardener is the part of me that always wants to create a sacred space for the person that I'm with, to help people find the karmic connections within their lives, to help them untether themselves, as we were saying earlier, from the happenstance of their life and be within the fullness of the experience as much as possible.
So beautifully said, because we do get caught up in the happenstance, and I think the beauty is in those moments where we remember that we're not just a human just tooling around life. Really wonderful, really wonderful. Although it is.
We're not just tools.
It's true. It's true. Oh my gosh. I love it. So much laughter around all this stuff, and I mean it's important, and it's weighty, but yet I got to believe that the soul is, as they say, it's only 23 or so grams if it's been measured at all. So it's light itself, and I think it's something to consider and to continue to bring into your everyday experience. I wanted to mention, Scott mentioned the experience of hospice workers and morphine, and it seemed like he was talking about, and what you were talking about were deathbed visions, so to speak. But I also wanted to mention, as a hospice worker sitting bedside with many folks, these deathbed visions, these experiences, these conversations to seemingly the other side have happened without morphine too, certainly with my own mother and with many other people that I've sat with. And so it sort of, when you were talking about the medical side of things and when the medical doctors want to put some sort of physical chemical experience around it, it's nice to know that exists without the chemicals and the drugs that might otherwise be inducing that, if someone were to argue that side.
Yeah. Well, I brought it up with a rather passionate person who's written books and has really been in the deaf community for quite some time, and just talked about the potential of that moment. And it was a science community, so it was not the time and place for my,
Right.
ethereal observations. So it's you learn there's a time and a place to open your mouth. So,
oh gosh, I have to learn that lesson. I don't
Yeah.
always learn that.
I just walk around with a foot and just in my mouth. Then I don't have to worry about it anymore.
I'm part of that crowd.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
That and electric cattle prods, I find them very helpful.
There you go.
Yeah.
For the, now, speaking of that, do you find anybody in that community that outside of, let's say, a group setting would kind of come up to you and pull you aside and say, hey, can I talk to you about this thing that happened to me? Because they're a human being having a soul level experience, whether they know it or acknowledge it or not. Have you ever found that those communities can sometimes be open individually?
I find this work fascinating because now that I'm really keen on the fact that I have sometimes very little to do with what happens, I just feel like a leaf that gets brought from one moment to the next. It's not so transient as that, but I really am clear on the fact that the spirit world, I'm working for them in some regard. I cannot tell you, Patty and Misty, how many times people start talking about death without having a clue what I do.
Isn't that something?
Oh my God. It is constant. And it gets to be really funny after a while. And of course they're having a very serious conversation and I'm like, here we go again. Oh, someone else passed away, or oh my goodness, they're really close to death. How ironic this is happening in my presence. How odd. But it's I think the agreement I have with my team is I said, I am not going to bring up the fact that I am a medium unless the conversation gets brought up or someone asks me what I do. Because I have no interest in converting. That's not why I am here.
Yeah.
I don't need to tell the world, and I really am not a proponent of people going up to someone and saying, hey, you know, I'm a medium and your grandmother is standing there. You just don't know where the person is. You don't know if it just happened. You don't know where they are in their process. So my agreement with the spirit world is if somebody brings it up, I'll absolutely talk about it. But
so it's
I learned, thank God for wisdom. I learned that there are times and places and spaces to talk about it, and now I'm wiser. So I just, you know, there are places where it's just never going to be the right place, and that's fine. I want people to believe what they believe. That's why their soul is here.
Exactly, for that personal trip.
Yeah. And if it is absolutely, I mean, look at it when it comes to politics. We need to have varying opinions. And we also need to be cool with the fact that people have another opinion. Right. Not need to change their mind, not need to blow them up because of it. We just need to be tolerant about the fact that this is a beautiful, juicy, diverse world.
Right. Thank God for that. I can't even imagine it any other way.
Yeah. It would be pretty boring if everybody agreed with you. I mean, what would we blog about?
Right.
What would therapists do if everybody agreed with each other?
Oh, I know.
Too boring.
I know. Entire professions just eradicated because everybody gets along.
I know.
Gee, imagine. I wonder what we'd do with our time if we had world peace.
No,
I guess we shouldn't go there.
I'd like to kind of step into that reality for a little bit, but it might be boring.
Yeah.
Austyn, when we were talking, you said something, and I wrote it down. I'd like to quote it and just get you to speak on it a little bit. You said, death is one of the sweetest moments where all elements of life are present at once. Sadness, blessing, hardship, expansion, challenge, and humor. And then you said if we could only finish our homework, there would be so much less regret and sadness. And then I said, I thought I knew what you were talking about, but I said, homework. Could you explain a little bit, please? And you said, unfinished business. The opportunities to turn a complication or an agitation into a soul step. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, you brought it up.
No, it's just more. I love my work. I will I'm blessed to do this and will do this for the rest of my life. It's the coolest occupation. I'm just lucky.
And there's no mediumship majors at colleges yet, I think, right?
I'm working on at least trying to help people see what's possible within mediumship. And that, Patty, is probably another topic, because the future of mediumship is really important to me, because we've got to keep the conversation evolving. But Misty, to go back to what we were talking about last night with soul steps, going back to our we choose, big chunk of cheese to bite there, I believe that the people around us are absolutely hand-chosen. The agitators, the complimenters, the supporters, the victims, by victims is just the person that we're not helping know that they can do it themselves. We need all of those people around us, but because we are human, just think we always have another day. We have another moment. And we settle with being frustrated and agitated and pissed off and all of those emotions because we're putting someone essentially in timeout because they have presented an opportunity for us to grow, and we're just not at that moment. And then they die. And then they come to see me. And then, fortunately, I get to witness these conversations, but these conversations are daily with people who have just not said the words. Now, it's interesting, the generation before ours seemed to not be the most expressive generation. So then that gave birth to our generation, which is all about feelings and how do you feel and how do I feel and do I love me, do I not love me? It's kind of, we've gotten a little bit neat about the whole thing. But now, because we were so introspective, now we've created a generation that's following us that is all about me. And I think at some point, we've all got to kind of get it together at the same point so we can have the, I'm taking care of myself, I'm working on myself, and I'm about me, and all of those three archetypes can be found in the same place. But if the entire generation is not communicating or overly analytical or all about me, and those are huge broad strokes about generations, that creates an imbalance too. So, yeah, our work is about the loose ends and being responsible. So many sessions are about having the willingness to forgive and allow a moment to be different. And the spirit world is seeming to be, at least in my sessions, so ready for those moments. But if we cannot reframe, if we cannot allow the moment to be different, then we go back to that analogy that we were talking about that one moment in our past that we are just not going to let be different. Right. Because then it doesn't evolve, and everything around us is constantly changing. So that's where we miss the evolution piece, and it's sad. I've even had times where in a session, someone comes to a medium and they're darned and determined to talk to one person. That's the only person I want to talk to. I don't care who else is here. And they'll have, the spirit world knows this is a soul moment. So they're like, oh, thank God they're in here. Let's just honor them. Let's help them out. And somebody comes in and they're like, yeah, I don't want to talk to them.
Oh, wow. Missing the moment.
Oh, and I think, the poor soul that's like done their hair and got dressed up, and they're like, oh my God, I'm really nervous. I finally get to talk to them. I hope this goes well. And all of a sudden they're like, and it's like, and thank you. And they're like, okay, wow. Now, the holding on to that kind of stuff, that's, where the body can get sick. That's where all that can happen. And, we can go into that conversation, which is not necessarily my field of expertise, but
Austyn,
they're moments.
I'm wondering what you can share with our viewers as far as if they have some agitation or frustration, or they're pissed off with someone now that is dead, and maybe they don't have access to a medium or don't want to see a medium. What can they do on their own to resolve this?
Nice question, Misty. Point, Misty. There is, all of us have an aspect of ourselves, if you back to that soul pie analogy. All of us have within our our soul, an aspect of us that will always be in the spirit world. It's just it's the divine self. It's the higher self. You can call it by many different names. That divine aspect of us is clearly aware of why we're here, why this person is in our life, and what the truth of the situation is. If you are having an agitation and a problem with someone, the greatest gift you can give them in that moment is to have a soul moment. Create a sacred, invisible place and ask that soul's higher self to sit down with you and listen to what the real truth is. And ask that person, thank you for honoring my soul. I know we're figuring something out, but right now I'm a little bit confused. Would you please honor me by helping me understand what you're gaining from this so I can have a more considered response when I'm talking to you so I can understand what our souls are learning from each other. And if the person is obstinate, difficult, and not on the same kind of evolutionary path that you are, then still create that moment, but call their higher self up and just say, I just wanted to recognize you. I want to recognize the soul aspect in you that knows that this moment is really important for both of us. And I want you to know from the bottom of my heart, I'm so grateful and thankful for you. Now, you do that work on the energetic, you come back to the situation, and time again, the situation's different because you've put grace around it. You've called in divine intelligence and said, infuse this moment with another intelligence because I'm not acting intelligently here.
Wow. You know, you're so full of absolutely beautiful moments, whether or not, and beautiful ways to help our consciousness, ourselves, our higher selves evolve, whether or not someone is comfortable with the idea of a medium. And that's what is so wonderful coming from a medium. And that's, to me, what gives you a kind of, I hate this word as if people aren't credible without it, but credibility. I don't know how else to put it. It's wonderful to get this kind of teaching from you without having to go to you if that's what people are concerned about. But I do think that there may be many people who do want to share with you, maybe do some deeper work. Can you tell us a little bit about how you work with folks when you do?
That falls more
and
into
also,
the...
just before you jump in, I just want to add to that piece. I know, Austyn, that part of your work is teaching others how to connect with their intuitive side and to develop their own spiritual capacities for connecting with the other side. So if you could add that into your answer, that would be lovely.
Certainly. Within my private practice, that's probably more under the umbrella of the soul gardening. However, the soul gardening always is going to have, I work connected to the spirit world. I work connected to divine intelligence. So a mediumship sitting is going to be specifically addressing the loved ones, pets, and team members that soul has as support for their evolution. Within the soul gardening, you still have the same team present. It's just their voices may not be as prevalent. But that's the source of all the work I do. Because I have an intelligence to a degree, but the infinite intelligence has a greater perspective of the evolution of mankind. So the shaman work was tremendous for me in starting to understand how to work with souls. I would sit with people, and there were things I didn't know how to help them with. And I was aware early on, thank goodness, that I seemed to have a personality that people find agreeable when it comes to going to a deeper aspect within themselves. And I'm always very nurturing and loving and try to make light of it and try to make the person feel as good as I can. But the ultimate healing has to be the person sitting across from me. I'm not a healer. None of us are. We just create the opportunity for a healing moment. So it's part of the reason why I'm drawn to teach the quintessential soul, I think that's the name of it, at the Afterlife Awareness Conference, because I've studied remote viewing, I've studied shamanism, I've studied all kinds of different energy healing modalities, worked as a medium, and all of these things come together, and I started realizing how incredibly accessible the universe is. So yes, I absolutely teach people how to connect with their loved ones, but I equally want them to know there's a whole universe inside. It's inside outside kind of. You go in to go out, right? But it's amazing. And you get a group together, people, and you put a social concern, and you put people in essentially spiritual think tanks, and you ask them to drop into a place and time and to look at it differently. I mean, there's so much out there. It's like being a spiritual astronaut. That's kind of what it is.
That's great. That's great. It's a great metaphor.
Yeah.
Well, it's I'm not sure if Misty dropped out there. She may be back, but you know, you have validated for me the importance of this journey, and you're so right when we talk about getting caught up in the everyday. As you're speaking, I think about these little niggling things that have been going on in my world, and you know, where that new perspective can come in, and even just thinking about that new perspective, and I hope people take this in. There is kind of a heart expansion or something that happens when you even begin to think about that. So when you think about how powerful that is to actually spend more time there, what kind of shifts and changes can take place. So you know, I think we just walk around, I know I do, I forget, as if somehow this spirituality is something that I do after I'm done this. You know what I mean? Like it's not connected to me somehow, like I have to go out and get it, retrieve it, bring it back, and hang with it for a while. You know, it's here, it's now, it's always. And to me, that's a way to really infuse, whether it's business or personal or you know, any kind of endeavor, with this experience. It's got to make it just go better. Why not, right?
It's at least more. I've realized. I think, Patty, we connect and we disconnect, and that's the truth of every moment. Yeah, we're either expanding into it, or we're regressing, I guess is a way of saying it, or we're distancing ourselves. Right. And if you can see every single moment of your life from the concept that it's a choice and it's a gift, no matter what presents itself, it gives you such an experience of living, because this is the moment of the life. This is what defines it, is this very present place. So if we're still tethered to that, you know, and they did and whatever and bleh, that thing, we're so not present. So then the piece of the pie, which can very easily time travel, we've got like 2 pieces present while half the pie is back in, you know, 19 fill in the blank. Right. So it's just about kind of allowing yourself, and I think it's the practice of mindfulness, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that you sit on a rock and you say Om and all those things. There's a million different ways to explore it, but we're spiritual beings first. But our eyes are so powerful that everything we see is visual, so that seems like that's what's real. Right. But the more I do the work, I'm like, actually, that's how weird. That's the illusion. The real thing is the feeling of my life.
Mm. That's beautiful. That's so well said. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Austyn. It's been absolutely delightful, and I could sit and listen to you for much longer. Yeah. I have been called away, so I think we'll have to wrap. Is there anything before we end, finish off, that you'd like to share? Is there anything burning on your chest that you feel called to share? And please also share how people can get a hold of you.
Okay. Before this moment would not be possible without Terry Daniel. Terry Daniel in the Afterlife conference that's in St. Louis this May. Please fill in the dates. That's the
12th to the 15th, I believe it is.
Thank you, Patty.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm right here.
Extra cookie for you. Terry's personal journey of healing has created such an amazing venue for healing, for empowerment, and for education. Terry is a remarkable human being and has been extraordinarily kind to me in giving me a place and a space to be passionate and for a forum for my passions to be shared with others. So that has to come off my chest, like I've just been waxed. It's an odd analogy, but that's what it felt like.
But I get it.
Here it is. Can you tell I was an esthetician at one point?
I didn't know that. How about that?
Yeah, one of many licenses. And
On
then,
the way.
And then, yeah.
On the way to the spirit world, right?
Yeah, or
Funny
something.
thing happened.
Who knows? It's a piece of a pie from way long ago. The other thing is how people can find me is my name is Austyn. You can see by that thing over here. That's me here. It's Austyn AustynWells.com. That's my website. It kind of is a hub to all the things I'm doing. And then I'm also doing a really interesting grief/mediumship handshake event in Virginia Beach with medium Robert Brown, and that's also on my site too. And then I teach mediumship and I mentor people in their own spiritual journey as well as their intuition and mediumship journeys. So I love to teach and share ideas, and that's where you can find me.
Wonderful. Sounds like you've got a lot going on, and I will say, other than the many favorite things you shared, one of the favorite things that you have, one of my favorite things you've talked about today is it's all food related, like the pieces of the pie, and I get an extra cookie. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
So,
well, it may be because I'm hungry.
Okay. So next time, we're not getting you after lunch next time because we'll have no food analogies. So
no, I'll remember. My memory will be good, Patty.
All right. Very, very good. Well, Austyn, thanks so much, and it's been a pleasure, and we will certainly make sure that we put anything else up on those show notes that people need to know, and also your website. You're going to be appearing at the Afterlife Conference. That's the afterlifeconference.com, May 12th through the 15th.
Yes.
And I'm hoping to come, and I would look forward to meeting you in person, in spirit.
And the quintessential soul, the thing I'm teaching is a pre-conference workshop. So it's on it's on Thursday afternoon, and then the conference starts Thursday night. Okay. So just so you know.
Very good. Very good. All right. Well, we wish you well. And this is Patty Burgess with DoingDeathDifferently.com. And Misty Lynn with BittersweetBlessing.com. We're going to sign off now and let you all get back to all those human doings, but remember the spirit part while you're doing it. All right. Take good care, everybody.
Good stuff. Bye, everyone. Great to have you, Austyn.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Sure. Bye-bye.